When Maya walked into our kitchen that Tuesday morning, coffee mug in hand, I knew something had shifted. She wasn't wearing the smile she'd perfected over 3 years of marriage. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Raw, unfiltered honesty. "I'm done pretending," she announced, setting her mug down with deliberate precision. The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked up from my laptop, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something inside me exhale. "Finally," I said, closing the screen slowly. "Something we agree on." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning started like any other Tuesday in our suburban Denver home. Maya had already showered and dressed in her usual business attire, a navy blazer that made her look professional and distant. I was hunched over my laptop at the kitchen island, responding to emails from clients who expected miracles on impossible deadlines. The routine had become so automatic that we moved around each other like choreographed dancers, never quite touching, never quite connecting. But something was different about the way Maya held herself that morning. Usually she'd hum while making her coffee, ask about my day ahead, maybe mention something about her presentation at the marketing firm where she worked. Today, silence filled the space between us like thick fog. I should have noticed the signs earlier. The way she'd stopped talking about her co-workers 3 weeks ago. How she'd begun sleeping on her side of the bed without crossing into the invisible boundary that had somehow formed down the middle of our mattress. The fact that she no longer laughed at my terrible jokes or rolled her eyes when I left dishes in the sink. Maya had always been the one who kept up appearances. When her mother called, Maya would paint pictures of our perfect life, how we were planning to renovate the guest bathroom, how we'd found this amazing new restaurant downtown, how I'd surprised her with flowers last week. None of it was technically false, but none of it captured the truth either. We weren't unhappy exactly, but we weren't happy. We were existing in the space between, pretending that existing was enough. The coffee maker finished its cycle with a familiar gurgle. Maya poured herself a cup, added cream but no sugar, a habit she'd developed recently that I'd pretended not to notice. Everything about us had become about pretending. Pretending we still talked about meaningful things. Pretending we still looked forward to weekends together. Pretending that the silence during dinner meant we were comfortable with each other, rather than running out of things to say. I typed another response to another client, my fingers moving automatically across the keyboard. The work had become my refuge, the one place where I felt competent and needed. At home, I felt like I was constantly performing the role of husband without understanding what the script was supposed to say. Maya walked to the window that overlooked our backyard. We'd planted those rose bushes together 2 springs ago, back when we still made plans that extended beyond the next few weeks. Now the garden looked overgrown, neglected. Neither of us had mentioned it, but we'd both stopped tending to things that required long-term commitment. "The Hendersons are getting divorced," she said suddenly, her back still to me. I looked up from my screen. The Hendersons lived 3 houses down. A couple we'd had over for barbecues, whose kids had played in our yard before we'd quietly stopped hosting gatherings. Really, they seemed happy. Maya turned around, and that's when I saw it, the expression that would change everything. Not sadness, not anger, but something more dangerous. Clarity. "That's just it," she said. "They seemed happy. We seem happy. The Johnsons next door seem happy. But what does that even mean anymore?" I closed my laptop completely now, giving her my full attention for the first time in weeks. "What do you mean?" She sat down across from me at the island, cradling her coffee mug like it might anchor her to something solid. When did we stop being honest with each other? When did we decide that keeping up appearances was more important than actually connecting? The question hung between us, and I realized I didn't have an answer. We'd graduated into pretending so gradually that I couldn't pinpoint when it started. Maybe it was when we stopped talking about our dreams and started only discussing logistics, who would pick up groceries, whose turn it was to call the cable company, whether we needed to buy a wedding gift for Maya's cousin, We used to talk about everything. Maya continued, her voice quieter now. Remember when we first moved in here? We'd stay up until 2 in the morning planning how we'd decorate each room, what kind of life we wanted to build together. I did remember. We'd sat on the floor of our empty living room, surrounded by moving boxes, mapping out our future like explorers charting unknown territory. When had we stopped exploring and started merely surviving? I've been thinking about this for months, Maya said, watching us move through our days like actors who forgot their lines. You ask how my day was, I say fine. I ask about your work, you say busy. We watch Netflix shows we don't really care about and go to bed at different times, so we don't have to acknowledge that we're not really together anymore. Even when we're in the same room, her words hit me like cold water. Not because they were harsh, but because they were true. We'd become experts at the surface-level maintenance of marriage. Without doing any of the deeper work that relationships required, I started pretending. Everything was fine because I thought that's what you needed, she continued. You seemed so stressed with work, so I didn't want to add to your burden by admitting that I felt lonely. So I smiled and nodded and made small talk about the weather and pretended that was enough. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not breaking. Exactly. But opening in a way that hurt and relieved me simultaneously. I've been pretending too, I admitted. Pretending that working 60-hour weeks was about providing for our future, when really it was just easier than facing the fact that I didn't know how to fix whatever was wrong between us. Maya nodded, and for the first time in months I saw her really see me. Not the version of me she'd been politely coexisting with, but the actual person sitting across from her. We've become strangers who share a mortgage, she said, and the accuracy of it took my breath away. That's when she said it, the words that would either end everything or begin something new. I'm done pretending. The silence that followed Maya's declaration stretched between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we wanted to cross. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, the distant hum of traffic on Maple Street, the ordinary sounds of a world that kept spinning while ours had just shifted on its axis. Okay, I said finally, surprising myself with how calm my voice sounded. So what does that look like? Not pretending. Maya's fingers traced the rim of her coffee mug, a nervous habit I'd forgotten she had until this moment when everything felt amplified and new. I honestly don't know, she admitted. I've gotten so good at being the version of myself that I thought you wanted. I'm not sure I remember who I actually am anymore. That hit me harder than I expected. Because wasn't that exactly what I'd been doing too? Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being David and started being Maya's husband, complete with all the expectations and limitations that role seemed to require. Tell me one true thing, I said, leaning forward. Something you haven't told me because you were trying to protect my feelings or keep the peace or whatever. Maya looked startled, like I'd asked her to solve a complex equation. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then laughed, not her polite laugh, but the real one I hadn't heard in months. I hate your mother's lasagna, she blurted out, then immediately covered her mouth with her hand as if she could take it back. I stared at her for a moment, then started laughing. Really laughing, the kind that comes from deep in your chest and surprises you with its intensity. You've been eating it for 3 years and complimenting her on it every single time. She's so proud of that recipe. She lights up whenever she makes it for us. How could I tell her it tastes like cardboard soaked in tomato sauce? My mom's lasagna does taste like cardboard soaked in tomato sauce, I agreed, still laughing. I've been choking it down since I was 12. Maya's eyes widened. You don't like it either. Why didn't you ever say anything? Same reason you didn't. It made her happy, and it seemed cruel to take that away from her. We sat there grinning at each other like conspirators who'd just discovered we'd been on the same side all along. It was such a small thing, my mother's terrible lasagna, but it felt enormous. If we'd been lying about something so trivial, what else had we been hiding? Your turn, Maya said. Tell me one true thing. I thought about it, sifting through all the small deceptions and diplomatic silences that had accumulated over the years. I didn't want to go to Jessica and Mark's engagement party last month. I haven't wanted to go to any of those couples events we keep getting invited to. They all feel like performances, where everyone's competing to prove how happy they are, and I leave feeling exhausted and hollow. Maya nodded slowly. I thought you enjoyed them. You always seem to have such good conversations with Mark about fantasy football. I hate fantasy football, I said. I have no idea what I'm talking about half the time. I just memorize statistics from ESPN and repeat them back. Why? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The question was simple, but the answer felt complicated. Because it was easier than admitting I don't fit in with your friend group. Because I didn't want to be the reason you stopped seeing people you cared about. Because somewhere along the way, I decided that being a good husband meant never being inconvenient. Maya reached across the counter and touched my hand, the first intentional physical contact we'd had in weeks that wasn't just brushing past each other or perfunctory goodnight kisses. I've been doing the same thing with your friends, she said. Remember Tyler's birthday dinner where I spent 45 minutes listening to Connor explain cryptocurrency? I wanted to stab myself with my fork, but I smiled and nodded because I thought that's what you needed me to do. Connor is insufferable, I said immediately. I only stay friends with him because we've known each other since college, and I don't know how to end a friendship that's based entirely on shared history and habit. Maya squeezed my hand. See? We've been protecting each other from truths that weren't even hurtful. They were just real. The kitchen felt different now, charged with a kind of energy I'd forgotten existed between us. Not romantic exactly, but alive in a way that had been missing. We were actually talking to each other instead of exchanging the social pleasantries that had replaced real conversation. I want to quit my job, Maya said suddenly, as if the admission had been waiting behind her teeth for months. Not to do something else specific, just to quit. I wake up every morning dreading going into that office, but I keep doing it because we have a mortgage and car payments, and it seemed irresponsible to admit I'm miserable. I felt something loosen in my chest. How long have you felt that way? About 18 months, ever since they promoted Linda to the position I wanted. I realized I was never going to advance there, but instead of looking for something else, I just stayed and got more and more resentful every day. I thought about Maya during those 18 months, how she'd gradually become quieter about work, how she'd stopped sharing funny stories about her co-workers or complaining about difficult clients. I'd interpreted her silence as contentment when it had actually been defeat. I've been thinking about freelancing, I said. Going back to the kind of creative projects I used to do before I got scared about financial security. But every time I brought it up, you'd mention something about the house or saving for retirement. So I figured you needed me to be stable and dependable. I never said that, Maya protested. You didn't have to. I could see it in your face whenever I talked about taking risks. That little furrow between your eyebrows that means you're worried, but trying not to show it. Maya touched her forehead self-consciously. I didn't realize I was doing that. But David, I was never worried about you freelancing. I was worried that you'd given up on the things that made you excited about work in the first place. You used to talk about your projects like they were adventures. Now you talk about them like they're chores. We were excavating years of misunderstood signals and assumptions, pulling them into the light where they looked smaller and more manageable than they had in the darkness of our separate silences. I stopped sharing the things that excited me, because I thought you found them frivolous, I said. Remember when I wanted to take that photography class last spring? You made that face. What face? The one that says, "That's nice, dear, but we have real responsibilities." Maya looked genuinely confused. I made a face because the class was on Thursday nights, and Thursday was the only night we were both home at a reasonable hour. I didn't want you to take a class. I wanted you to want to spend Thursday nights with me. The misunderstanding felt so stupid and so preventable that it was almost funny. Almost. We've been having two completely different marriages, I said. 3 years of parallel lives, Maya agreed. Both of us trying so hard to be what we thought the other person needed that we forgot to be ourselves. The morning sun had shifted, sending new patterns of light across our kitchen table. In a few minutes, Maya would normally leave for work, and I would normally retreat to my laptop, and we would normally spend another day politely coexisting in our separate orbits. But this wasn't a normal morning anymore. So what do we do now? I asked. Maya looked at me with those clear, honest eyes that had started this whole conversation. I think we figure out who we actually are when we're not performing. And then we decide if those people want to be married to each other. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like the first real possibility we'd had in years. Maya called in sick to work. She'd never done that before, not once in the 3 years I'd known her. Even when she had the flu last winter, she dragged herself to the office with a box of tissues and a bottle of Dayquil, insisting she had too many deadlines to stay home. But at 8:47 a.m., she picked up her phone and called her supervisor. "Hi, Jennifer, it's Maya. I won't be in today. I need to take care of something important." She paused, listening. "No, I'm not sick. I just need the day." Another pause. "I understand this is unusual. I'll make up the work tomorrow." When she hung up, she looked at me with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "I've never done that before. How does it feel?" "Like I might throw up," she said, but she was smiling. "But also like I can breathe properly for the first time in months." I closed my laptop and pushed it aside. "Then I guess we're both playing hooky today." "You have that conference call with the Morrison account at 10. The Morrison account can wait." The words surprised me as much as they seemed to surprise Maya. "Actually, you know what? The Morrison account has been jerking me around for 3 weeks, asking for revision after revision, without paying me for the extra work. Maybe it's time I stop pretending that's acceptable." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to do?" I pulled out my phone and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. "Mr. Morrison? Hi, it's David. I'm calling about the revisions you requested yesterday." I listened to his familiar demands, the same entitled tone I'd been accommodating for months. "Actually, I need to stop you there. The scope of work we agreed on was completed 2 weeks ago. If you want additional changes, we'll need to discuss a new contract with appropriate compensation." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Maya moved closer to listen. Finally, Morrison's voice crackled through the speaker. "Are you trying to extort me?" "I'm trying to run a business," I said, amazed by how steady my voice sounded. "You can either accept the work as delivered, pay for additional revisions, or find another designer. Those are your options." After I hung up, Maya stared at me like I'd just performed magic. "Who are you, and what did you do with my husband?" I think I just remembered that I don't have to accept being treated badly just to keep a client happy. "Morrison's going to fire you." "Good," I said, and meant it. "He pays late, demands unreasonable changes, and treats me like his personal servant. I've been dreading every interaction with him for months." Maya sat down hard in the chair across from me. "This is terrifying, or what is? This version of you, this version of us. What if we like these people better? What if we've been settling for mediocrity because it felt safer than risking something real?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and fear. Because she was right, there was something terrifying about discovering that we'd been capable of more honesty, more authenticity, more courage all along. It meant we'd been choosing the smaller versions of ourselves, and that choice felt like a kind of betrayal. "Remember our first apartment?" I asked suddenly. "That tiny place above the bakery on 5th Street? Maya's expression softened. "With the radiator that sounded like a dying walrus, and the bathroom door that wouldn't close properly. We were so broke, we ate ramen for dinner 4 nights a week, but we were happy. Really happy. When did we stop being those people? When we decided that being adults meant giving up the things that made us feel alive," Maya said. "When we started measuring success by how well we fit into other people's expectations instead of our own." I thought about the couple we'd been in that cramped apartment. We'd stayed up late talking about our dreams, making elaborate plans for the future, laughing until our sides hurt at inside jokes that wouldn't have been funny to anyone else. We'd been broke but rich in ways that mattered more than money. I miss her, Maya said quietly. The woman I was then. She was braver. She took chances. She said what she meant, what happened to her. Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the rose bushes we'd neglected. She got scared. Scared of not being enough. Scared of disappointing people. Scared of not living up to the image of who she thought she was supposed to become. So she started performing instead of living. I did the same thing, I admitted. Somewhere along the way, I decided that being a good husband meant never causing problems, never being difficult, never asking for what I actually wanted. I became this agreeable ghost of myself. We both did. Maya looked back at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. We created these perfect little boxes for ourselves, and then wondered why we felt suffocated. My phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. Fine. Find someone else to put up with your attitude. I showed Maya the message, expecting to feel panic or regret. Instead, I felt relief so profound it was almost dizzying. One down, I said. How many other parts of our lives are we accepting out of habit instead of choice? Maya pulled out a notepad from the kitchen drawer, the same one where she kept grocery lists and appointment reminders. Let's make a list of what? Everything. Every commitment, every relationship, every routine that we're only maintaining because we think we're supposed to. Let's figure out what we actually want to keep. For the next hour, we filled 3 pages. The couple's dinners with people we didn't really enjoy. The expensive gym membership Maya never used because she preferred running outside. The cable package with channels we never watched. The obligation to attend every family gathering, even the ones that left us both emotionally drained. The automatic yes to social invitations we didn't actually want to accept. This is a lot, I said, looking at our list. It's our entire life, Maya said. Almost everything we do is something we think we should do rather than something we want to do. What if we just stopped? Stopped what? All of it. What if we cancelled the dinner with the Petersons this Saturday? What if you didn't go to your cousin's baby shower next weekend? What if we spent a whole month only doing things we actually wanted to do? Maya looked at the list, then at me. People would think we'd lost our minds. Maybe we have. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. She picked up the pen and wrote at the bottom of the page, things we actually want to do. The page stayed blank for several minutes. That's the problem, isn't it? Maya said finally. We've gotten so good at doing what we think we should do that we've forgotten what we actually want. So, let's figure it out. Right now, today. I took the pen from her hand. What's one thing you've wanted to do, but haven't, because it seemed frivolous or impractical? Maya bit her lip, thinking, I've always wanted to take a pottery class. There's a studio downtown that offers weekend workshops, but it seemed like a waste of money for something I'd probably be terrible at. I wrote pottery class at the top of the page. What else? I want to travel somewhere we've never been. Not a resort vacation where everything's planned for us, but somewhere we could explore and get lost and discover things by accident. Like where? Portland, maybe? I've heard they have amazing food trucks and weird little bookstores. Or we could drive up the coast and just see what we find. I added spontaneous travel to the list. My turn, I want to start photographing again. Not for clients, just for me. I used to love walking around the city at dawn, catching the light as it changed. I haven't done that in years. What stopped you? I convinced myself it was selfish. That if I had time for creative projects, I should be using that time to earn money, or work on the house, or be productive in some measurable way. Maya reached over and squeezed my hand. That's the saddest thing you've said all day. I know, but today feels different. Today feels like maybe it's okay to want things just because they make me happy. We spent the rest of the morning filling the page with dreams we'd been too practical to pursue, adventures we'd been too cautious to take, versions of ourselves we'd been too scared to become. By noon, we had a blueprint for a completely different kind of life. The first test came sooner than expected. At 2:30 p.m., Maya's phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's name, and we both stared at it like it might explode. She never calls during work hours unless it's an emergency, Maya said. But she didn't move to answer it. Maybe it is an emergency, or maybe she's calling to remind me about Aunt Carol's retirement party this weekend. The one I completely forgot about until just now. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Maya looked at me with panic in her eyes. I can't do it. I can't have the same conversation we always have where I pretend to be excited about driving 3 hours to eat rubber chicken and make small talk with relatives I see once a year. So don't what? Don't have that conversation. I nodded toward the phone. Answer it, but be honest. Maya's hand hovered over the phone. What if she gets upset? Then she gets upset. That's allowed. On the 4th ring, Maya answered. Hi, Mom. A pause. No, I'm not at work today. I took a personal day. Another pause, longer this time. Actually, Mom, about Aunt Carol's party. I watched Maya's face as she listened to her mother's voice, probably already launching into the details about arrival times and who was bringing what dish. Maya took a deep breath. Mom, I need to interrupt you for a second. David and I aren't going to be able to make it this weekend. Silence from Maya's end, then. No, we're not sick. We're taking some time to focus on us right now. And that means saying no to some commitments we normally would have said yes to out of obligation. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, and I could only hear Maya's side, but I watched her face transform as she held her ground. Her mother was clearly not pleased. Maya's responses grew shorter and more defensive, but she didn't back down. I understand you're disappointed, Maya said finally. I'm sorry this is last minute. Give Aunt Carol my love. She hung up and immediately slumped forward, burying her face in her hands. How do you feel? I asked. Terrible, she said, but when she looked up she was smiling, and also proud of myself, and also terrified that my mother is never going to forgive me. She will. How do you know? Because you've been the perfect daughter for 31 years. One missed retirement party isn't going to erase that. And if it does, then maybe that tells us something important about the relationship. Maya nodded, but I could see the guilt still eating at her. We'd both been trained from childhood to believe that disappointing people who loved us was the worst possible outcome, even if keeping them happy meant betraying ourselves. Your turn, she said. Call Tyler about his poker night tomorrow. I'd been dreading Tyler's monthly poker games for the better part of a year. They'd started as a fun way for our college friend group to stay connected, but somewhere along the way, they'd devolved into 5-hour marathons of drinking, crude jokes, and conversations that made me feel like I was slowly losing brain cells. I don't know if I'm ready for that one, I said. Why not? Because Tyler's my oldest friend. Because if I start being honest with him about how much I hate those poker nights, I might have to be honest about other things too, like how we don't really have anything in common anymore except shared history. And that scares you. It terrifies me. What if I lose him? Maya reached across the table and took my hand. What if you're not really friends with him anymore anyway? What if you're just friends with the memory of who he used to be? The question hit me like cold water, because she was right. The Tyler I'd been friends with in college had been funny and thoughtful and genuinely interested in ideas. Tyler, who hosted poker nights, spent most of his time complaining about his job, his wife, his neighbors, anything and everything except the choices he could actually control. I pulled out my phone and typed, "Hey man, I'm going to pass on poker tomorrow night. Need to focus on some other things right now." Tyler's response came back within minutes. "Everything okay? You never miss poker night." I stared at the message, knowing that the old me would have made up an excuse about work or feeling sick. Instead, I typed, "Everything's fine. Just prioritizing differently these days. Dude, it's one night. Come on!" And there it was. The pressure disguised as friendship. The assumption that my time belonged to anyone who asked for it, as long as they asked with the right tone of entitlement. Not this time, I typed back. Maybe we can grab coffee soon instead. Tyler didn't respond. How does it feel to disappoint people? Maya asked, watching me set the phone down, like I'm becoming someone I don't recognize. But also like I'm becoming someone I might actually like. We spent the rest of the afternoon fielding the consequences of our new honesty. Maya's supervisor called back, confused about why she'd taken a sick day without being sick. Maya explained that she'd needed a mental health day and would be more productive when she returned to work refreshed. The supervisor didn't seem entirely convinced, but she accepted it. I got 2 more texts from Tyler, each one slightly more aggressive than the last, as if my refusal to attend poker night was a personal betrayal. I didn't respond to either of them. This is harder than I thought it would be, Maya said around 4 p.m., curled up on our couch with a book she'd been meaning to read for months. What is? Being ourselves. I always thought the hard part would be figuring out who we really were. But that's actually been the easy part. The hard part is dealing with everyone else's reactions to these new versions of us. She was right. The people in our lives had grown accustomed to certain versions of Maya and David, accommodating, agreeable, predictable. They'd structured their expectations around our willingness to prioritize their needs over our own. Now that we were changing the rules, they were pushing back. My mom called me selfish, Maya said quietly. She's never called me selfish before. Are you? Selfish? Maya considered this. Maybe a little. But I think I've been so unselfish for so long that I forgot I was allowed to have needs too. Maybe a little selfishness is healthy. What if people don't like these versions of us? I asked. Then they don't like us, the real us. And maybe that's information we need to have. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves sitting on our back porch, looking at the overgrown rose bushes we'd been meaning to tend. The evening air was crisp, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and the sound of children playing in neighboring yards. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Maya said. Like there's going to be some terrible consequence for choosing ourselves over everyone else's expectations. Maybe there will be. Maybe some people will be angry with us. Maybe some relationships won't survive this. And you're okay with that? I thought about it, really thought about it. I think I'd rather have 5 genuine relationships than 25 fake ones. I think I'd rather be disliked for who I am than loved for who I'm pretending to be. Maya nodded slowly. I called the pottery studio while you were in the shower. I signed up for a weekend workshop next month. Both of us? I figured if we're going to start being authentic, we might as well do it together. Plus, you said you wanted to try new things. I've never expressed any interest in pottery. No, but you've never expressed any interest in not trying pottery either. Maya grinned at me, and I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with. Playful, spontaneous, willing to take risks for the sake of discovery. Fair point, I said. Although I should warn you, I have terrible hand-eye coordination. Good, then we can be terrible at it together. As darkness fell around us, I realized something had shifted, not just between Maya and me, but in the way I felt about our life, our choices, our future. For the first time in years, I felt curious about what might happen next, instead of simply resigned to more of the same. Tomorrow's going to be interesting, Maya said. Why? Because we have to figure out how to live like this every day. How to keep being honest when it's inconvenient. How to keep choosing ourselves when it's easier to just go along with what everyone expects. She was right. Today was about dramatic gestures and grand revelations. Tomorrow would be about the small, daily choices that would either reinforce our new commitment to authenticity or slowly erode it back into comfortable pretense. Are you ready for that? I asked. Maya looked at me with those clear, honest eyes that had started this whole transformation. I'm terrified, she said. But yes, I'm ready. 3 weeks later, our house felt like a completely different place. The change wasn't dramatic. We hadn't renovated or redecorated or bought new furniture. Instead, it was the accumulation of dozens of small choices that had shifted the entire atmosphere. Maya had moved her easel from the basement storage room to the corner of our living room. where natural light streamed through the bay window she'd always admired, but never used. I'd cleared out the spare bedroom and set it up as a photography darkroom, complete with blackout curtains and the enlarger I'd bought years ago but never assembled. But the most significant change was invisible. We'd stopped walking on eggshells around each other. "I think we should get a dog," Maya announced one Thursday morning, not looking up from her sketch pad where she was working on a charcoal drawing of the coffee shop owner's elderly terrier. 6 months ago, this statement would have sent me into a spiral of practical concerns. Who would walk it when we were both at work? What about the carpet? What if it got sick and needed expensive veterinary care? What about vacation plans? Instead, I found myself saying, "What kind of dog?" Maya looked up, surprised by my response. "You're not going to list 17 reasons why it's a bad idea." "Probably. But I'm curious about what kind of dog you want first. A rescue. Something medium-sized with personality. Maybe a mutt who's been waiting too long for someone to choose them." I set down my coffee cup and really looked at her. "You've been thinking about this for a while." "Months," she admitted. "Every time I pass the animal shelter on my way to work, I imagine stopping in just to look. But I always talk myself out of it because it seems impulsive and irresponsible. What changed your mind?" Maya gestured around our transformed living space. "All of this. We've been so careful for so long, so focused on making sensible choices, that we forgot life is supposed to have some joy in it too. And I think a dog would bring us joy." I thought about the practical concerns that would have consumed me before. They were still there. Pet insurance, dog walkers, the inevitable accidents on our hardwood floors. But they seemed smaller now, manageable rather than overwhelming. "Let's go this Saturday," I said. Maya's face lit up in a way that made me realize how long it had been since I'd seen her genuinely excited about something. "Really? Really? We'll just look. No pressure to adopt anything, but let's see what happens." That afternoon, Maya called me from work with news that would have sent the old version of us into crisis mode. "Jennifer's putting me on a performance improvement plan," she said without preamble. "What? Why?" "Apparently my attitude has become concerning. I've missed 2 client dinners this month because I had other plans. I haven't volunteered for any overtime projects. And I told the Henderson account that their constant revisions were affecting the quality of the work." All of which sounds reasonable to me, right? "But Jennifer says I'm not showing the same level of commitment I used to. She wants to see me re-engage with the team culture and demonstrate renewed enthusiasm for client service." The old me would have panicked, would have immediately started strategizing how Maya could get back in Jennifer's good graces, what compromises we'd need to make, how to fix this problem as quickly as possible. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "How do you feel about it?" "Honestly? Relieved." "Relieved?" "David, I hate this job. I've hated it for so long that I forgot what it felt like to not hate going to work. Jennifer putting me on a performance improvement plan isn't a crisis. It's permission to stop pretending I want to be there." "So, what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of not knowing." That evening, we had dinner with Maya's sister Rachel and her husband Scott, the kind of couple's dinner we'd been avoiding for months. But this time felt different because we weren't performing for them. We weren't trying to project an image of perfect marriagehood or carefully editing our conversation to avoid topics that might make us seem less than ideal. "You two seem different," Rachel observed halfway through the meal. "More present, I guess." "Different how?" Maya asked. "I don't know how to explain it." "More like yourselves. Less like you're trying to be what you think a married couple should be." Maya and I exchanged glances across the table. "We've been working on being more honest," Maya said simply. "About what?" "Everything. With each other, with ourselves, with the people in our lives," Scott laughed. "That sounds terrifying." "It is," I said, "but it's also liberating. We spent so much energy maintaining an image that we forgot to actually live our lives." "Give us an example," Rachel said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Maya set down her fork. "Remember how you always said I was so lucky to love my job? The truth is, I've been miserable at work for over a year, but I kept pretending everything was fine because I thought admitting I was unhappy would make me seem ungrateful or weak. And I've been saying yes to client projects I hated because I thought being a good provider meant never turning down work. Even when it made me resentful and exhausted, I added. Rachel looked stunned. I had no idea. You both always seemed so together. That was the problem, Maya said. We were so committed to seeming together that we forgot to actually be together. The conversation continued for another 2 hours, covering territory we'd never explored with Rachel and Scott before. Rachel talked about her struggles with feeling like she'd lost her identity after becoming a mother. Scott admitted he'd been considering a career change, but was terrified of disappointing his father, who'd helped him get his current job. By the end of the night, all 4 of us seemed lighter somehow, as if we'd been carrying invisible weights we hadn't realized we could set down. We should do this more often, Scott said as they were leaving. What, dinner? I asked. No, this. Talking about real things instead of just updating each other on schedules and weather patterns. After they left, Maya and I cleaned dishes in comfortable silence. It struck me that 6 months ago, we would have spent the drive home dissecting every moment of the evening, worried about what impression we'd made, whether we'd said anything wrong, if we'd seemed happy enough or successful enough or whatever enough. Tonight, we'd simply enjoyed ourselves. I have something to tell you, Maya said as she dried the last plate. I've been working on an exit strategy. From your job? From my entire career path. I've been researching art therapy programs. There's one at the university that offers evening classes for working professionals. I turned to face her fully. Art therapy? I know it sounds like a complete 180, but I've been thinking about it since I started drawing again. Remember how you said you felt like you'd forgotten who you were before you became afraid of not being practical? I think that's what happened to me too. I used to want to help people, and I used to love creating things. Somehow, I convinced myself I had to choose between being helpful and being creative. What made you realize you didn't have to choose? Maya smiled, gesturing toward her easel in the corner. You did. Watching you set up that dark room, seeing you get excited about taking pictures again. It reminded me that we don't have to accept the narrow definitions of success that other people impose on us. When would you start? Next fall, if I get accepted. Which means I'd need to quit my job by summer. The financial implications hit me immediately. The mortgage, the car payments, health insurance, all the practical concerns that used to dominate our decision-making process. But underneath the worry, I felt something I hadn't expected. Excitement. We'll figure it out, I said. You're not going to tell me all the reasons it's impractical. Oh, it's completely impractical. We'll probably have to get rid of cable and eat more pasta and postpone that kitchen renovation we've been talking about. But Maya, when you talk about art therapy, you light up in a way I haven't seen in years. How do you put a price on that? Maya stepped closer and hugged me, really hugged me, the kind that lasts long enough to feel like a conversation without words. I love you, she said into my shoulder. I love you too. The real you. Not the version you think I need you to be. Even if the real me wants to adopt a dog and go back to school and quit her stable job to pursue something that might not work out. Especially then, as we turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I realized that our marriage wasn't ending. It was finally beginning. 6 months after Maya's declaration in our kitchen, we were standing in the lobby of the animal shelter with a 3-legged beagle mix named Winston, who had apparently decided we belonged to him. He's missing a leg, the volunteer, a college student named Sarah, said apologetically. Most people pass him over for that reason. He's been here 8 months. Winston was currently attempting to climb into Maya's lap while she sat cross-legged on the floor, his tail wagging with such enthusiasm that his entire back end wiggled. The missing leg didn't seem to slow him down at all. What happened to him? I asked. Hit by a car before he came to us. The previous family couldn't afford the surgery, so they surrendered him. But he gets around just fine now. He's actually one of our most energetic dogs. Maya looked up at me, and I could see the question in her eyes. Winston had chosen us as decisively as we'd been choosing each other over the past months. He wasn't the practical choice. He'd require special care, potential medical issues, and he was older than the puppy we'd vaguely discussed. But he was perfect in a way that had nothing to do with logic. "We'll take him," I said. 20 minutes later, we were walking out with Winston trotting between us on his new leash, a bag of supplies, and paperwork that officially made us a family of 3. "My mother is going to have opinions about this," Maya said as we loaded Winston into the back seat of our car. "Probably. Are you worried about that?" Maya considered this as Winston settled in for the ride, already looking like he'd been part of our lives forever. "No, actually, I'm not worried about her opinions anymore. They're just opinions." The shift in Maya's relationship with her family had been gradual but profound. She'd started declining obligations that felt more like performances than genuine connection. And surprisingly, the sky hadn't fallen. Her mother had adjusted, eventually even admitting that she appreciated knowing when Maya really wanted to be somewhere versus when she was just showing up out of duty. "Besides," Maya continued, "she'll love him once she meets him." "It's impossible not to," as if he understood the compliment. Winston stretched forward from the back seat and licked Maya's ear, making her laugh in a way that sounded like pure joy. The past 6 months had been full of these moments, small instances that would have seemed unremarkable to outside observers, but felt revolutionary to us. Maya quitting her job the day after Jennifer tried to write her up for attitude problems. Me turning down 3 high-paying projects that would have required me to work with clients who treated me poorly. Both of us learning to say, "That doesn't work for us," without feeling compelled to provide elaborate justifications. We'd lost some relationships along the way. Tyler had stopped calling entirely after I missed 3 consecutive poker nights. A few of Maya's work friends had grown distant when she stopped participating in after-hours drinks and weekend team-building activities. But the relationships that remained had deepened in ways that surprised us both. Rachel and Scott had become regular fixtures in our lives, drawn by the permission our honesty gave them to be more authentic too. Maya's friendship with her college roommate Emma had been rekindled when Maya finally admitted she'd been pretending to enjoy the fancy restaurants Emma always chose for their annual catch-up dinners. It turned out Emma had been pretending too, and they'd started meeting for coffee and long walks instead. Most surprisingly, my relationship with my parents had improved dramatically once I stopped trying to be their idea of a perfect son and started being myself. My father and I had discovered a shared interest in old movies that we'd never explored when I was busy pretending to care about sports. My mother had started sending me recipes for simple, healthy meals instead of elaborate dishes I'd never attempted to make. "How's the portfolio coming?" Maya asked as we pulled into our driveway. "Good, really good. Actually, I'd been building a body of work focused on authenticity, portraits of people in unguarded moments, landscapes that captured the beauty in imperfection, street photography that found truth in everyday situations. I have a meeting with that gallery owner next week." "Nervous?" "Terrified," I admitted. But the good kind of terrified. The kind that means I care about something enough to risk failing at it. Maya had gotten accepted into the art therapy program and would start classes in the fall. She'd been supporting us with freelance graphic design work, projects she chose based on interest rather than desperation, clients who respected her boundaries and paid fairly for her expertise. We had less money than before, but we also had less stress, less resentment, and significantly more joy. Winston, meanwhile, had discovered our backyard and was currently inspecting the rose bushes we'd finally gotten around to tending. Under Maya's care, they'd started blooming again, not perfectly but beautifully in their imperfection. That evening we had people over for dinner. Not a carefully orchestrated dinner party with matching dishes and planned conversation topics, but a casual gathering with Emma and her partner, Rachel and Scott and my college friend Mike, who'd reconnected with me after I'd posted some of my photography on social media. The conversation ranged from Emma's decision to leave law school to pursue ceramics, to Scott's excitement about the non-profit he'd started, to Mike's struggle with coming out to his conservative parents at age 34. We talked about fear and failure, dreams and disappointments, the messy complexity of building lives that felt authentic rather than impressive. "This is nice," Mike said as we were cleaning up afterward. "When did we all get so real?" "When we stopped being afraid of what everyone would think if we stopped pretending to be perfect," Maya answered. "After everyone left, Maya and I sat on our back porch with Winston curled up between us, watching the sun set over our neighborhood. The evening was quiet except for the usual suburban sounds, children playing, someone mowing their lawn, the distant hum of traffic. "Do you ever miss it?" Maya asked. "The old version of our life?" I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. When every choice was made based on what we thought we should do, we never had to grapple with what we actually wanted. That was easier in some ways. But easier isn't the same as better. I'd rather struggle with choices that matter than coast through choices that don't, Maya nodded, absently scratching Winston's ears. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For there to be some terrible consequence for choosing ourselves over everyone else's expectations. Maybe there will be consequences we haven't faced yet," I said. "Maybe some people will never forgive us for changing. Maybe some opportunities will pass us by because we're not willing to sacrifice our authenticity for success." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with the possibility of it. Because the alternative, going back to pretending, feels impossible now. I can't unknow what it feels like to be myself in my own life." Winston stretched and resettled himself, sighing with the contentment of a dog who'd found his people. In the distance, we could hear our neighbors, the Johnsons, having what sounded like their weekly argument about whose turn it was to take out the garbage. "Do you think they're happy?" Maya asked, gesturing toward the sound. "I think they're doing what they think they're supposed to do, just like we were. And now?" I looked at Maya, really looked at her. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. She was wearing paint-stained jeans and one of my old T-shirts. And she looked more beautiful to me than she ever had in her carefully curated business attire. Now we're doing what makes us happy, and what makes us us. As darkness settled around us, I realized that Maya's declaration 6 months ago, "I'm done pretending," hadn't been an ending after all. It had been a beginning. The beginning of a marriage built on truth instead of performance, choices made from love instead of fear, a life constructed around who we actually were rather than who we thought we should be. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always easy. But it was real in a way that felt like coming home to ourselves. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. Winston gave a small dream bark in his sleep, chasing something in whatever world dogs visit when they close their eyes. Maya reached over and took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine, with the easy familiarity of two people who no longer had to pretend to be anyone other than exactly who they were. "I love you," she said, simple and direct, without any of the careful qualifications that used to hedge our most important words. "I love you too," I replied, meaning it in ways I hadn't understood were possible when love was tangled up with performance and expectation. Above us, the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and our imperfect, authentic, beautifully real life stretched out ahead of us like an invitation to keep choosing ourselves, keep choosing each other, keep choosing truth over comfort. We were finally done pretending, and we were just getting started. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.